We are so glad that you all are here. And I want to just take a minute to uh, welcome you to the Birdability Mental Health Awareness Month webinar, where we're going to talk about mental health and we're going to talk about birding. And we are really grateful to have you all here with us. Um, I want to, first of all, thank the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. They are have been incredible supporters of Birdability and our work to create access to the outdoors for folks with disabilities. They work themselves through the Paralysis Resource Center and through their Outdoors for Everyone campaign to help make sure that the outdoors is accessible to folks living with paralysis. And we are so grateful for their ongoing work at that and their support for our work here at Birdability. We're really sad that they're not able to join us today. They were going to be here and had a death occur and aren't able to join us after all. But I really encourage you to check out their website, Google Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, and you're going to see the really amazing work that is happening there. I want to acknowledge our fantastic ASL interpreters who are joining us from Pro Bono ASL. Thank you, Tyree and Benny, for being here with us today. I also want to remind folks that if closed captioning is something that would be useful to you, that captions are enabled, and all that you have to do is go to the bottom of your screen and hit show captions at the CC button, and that will allow you to see captions in real time as we move forward with our conversation today. We have been doing a number of different webinars, and I wanted to just let folks know that if you are interested in learning more about Birdability, learning more about our work, learning more about our panelists, learning more about any of that, you can go to birdability.org, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is just at Birdability. We have all of our previous recordings there, and we hope that you will check it out and see if there's more that you might want to learn about creating access and inclusion in the outdoors. I also thought it would be helpful to introduce myself to get us started. My name is Kat Fribley. I'm the executive director here at Birdability. I am a fat, white, purple-haired woman. I'm queer and multiply disabled. I'm wearing rainbow glasses today. My hair's up in two buns. And behind me is a bookshelf, a bunch of green plants, and a red wall. I'm coming to you from the traditional lands of the Meskwaki and am delighted to be able to host this conversation today about accessible birding for mental health because I'm a trauma survivor. I'm somebody who received a diagnosis of PTSD early in my life and who has used birding as a tool for mental health for many years. After a series of injuries and illnesses left me with some pretty huge mobility issues, I was really grateful to find Birdability and the work that they were doing and knew this was my home. And so I'm really grateful to be here. I reached out to the folks on this screen and to Tama Watts, who we hope will be joining us soon, is running late, um, because I thought that this would be a really great conversation to kick off or to actually wrap up a continuing conversation about mental health during Mental Health Awareness Month. And I want to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. I want to say, first of all, Elizabeth, I was so glad to find you in the place we find each other these days sometimes, which is social media, right? And to see the amazing work that you are doing, both as the founder of Part-Time Birds and also Part-Time Birders, and also as a master's, now no longer a student, right? You just received your master's in social work, and that work very specifically focused on the perceived benefits, right, of birding and mental health. Eric, of course, immediately my mind flew to you in part because of the amazing opportunities you and I have had to talk about birding as a mental health and wellness tool in our own lives. Uh, but then also having had an opportunity for you to do the sort of accessible joys of backyard birding panel last year for Birdability Week, I think of you now as like the backyard bird joy maven. And so I really love the ways that that you are able to talk about birding and the joy that it brings. So Elizabeth and Eric, I think I'll start with you, Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, sharing a little bit about you, and then let's jump to question number one. And for each of you, as you introduce yourself, I'll ask you what initially drew you to birding, because I think that's always a good place to start.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Monge. I am a first-generation daughter of Mexican immigrants. As Kat mentioned, I just graduated with my master's in social work from Cal State Northridge. I'm located in California. I focused my research during my master's program on researching the perceived benefits of birding. Um, and through that, I found so many amazing findings. I actually found Birdability through my research, so I'm very grateful to have been able to connect with Kat and just to be here today. Um, what drew me to birding? I've had birds my entire life, pet birds, and it really happened after I decided to become sober. I stopped
Mm,
drinking. And so having a lot of time and energy on the weekends, early mornings, really sparked that motivation to really get out to the outdoors and to practice that mindfulness. It's definitely something that I hadn't experienced before. And just being able to get out and get to know so many people and be involved in the birding community has been such a
mhm,
blessing.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So to start with a visual description of myself, I'm a 37-year-old white man, and I am looking more and more like a hippie or mountain man each day. I've got, I guess, long, almost reddish kind of blonde hair, really thick beard and mustache, and got a sage headband around holding my hair in place. And then I'm in my garage, which there's some gray noise dampening panels on the walls, an image of microphones, and a little handcrafted parrot
Mhm.
that is mounted on my desk. So anyway, yeah, what first brought me to birding, um, it's definitely more of a journey than kind of like like a single moment. This was in 2019, and I read How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell,
Mm,
which is a really fabulous book. And, it's not about how to be lazy or non-contributing. It's really about how to allow space or open space for us to really um explore deep ideas and to really think about our lives and to be more to live more mindfully. And
mm,
her best suggestion for how to reach this state was to watch birds. And
mm,
she described how she would regularly go to this rose garden in Oakland, and eventually she was able to recognize all of the different bird sounds that she would hear at this park. And I kind of just had this goal. I want to be able to identify all the birds that visit my yard by hearing, and I was also had a daily journaling habit at that time, and I found myself just increasingly writing about birds,
mm,
and I just birds really unlocked my creativity and just were a ceaseless wellspring of inspiration. And as I went along, I, you know, had these really tremendous experiences with birds where the birds really themselves were saying, you should really be paying attention to us. There's something really magical happening. And I was just continuously in awe and impressed by birds. And as the years gone on, I've just become more and more passionate about them.
I love that so much. And I know we're going to have a chance to talk later even more about mindfulness and sort of the ways that birds are an entry, right, into that work often better for folks who have disabilities or are navigating trauma or other kinds of barriers or challenges in their lives. So super excited about that. Elizabeth, I'm wondering if we could start with you. Tama said she's on her way. She's going to join us. I'm curious if you could share some key takeaways from your research on the perceived benefits of birding, because we know like the research has just been exploding, right, about nature and birds in particular, and that as a pathway to mental health and wellness. And I'm wondering if you would share a little bit about your research and talk about what you found. Yeah.
Yeah, so my main focus in my research was to understand the perceived benefits of birding. Um, I ultimately found that there was a lot of participants shared that it really did improve their mental health, specifically depression and anxiety symptoms, some ADHD symptoms helped. They expressed it as a way for them to really be present and grounded. Focusing on a bird or just focusing on listening to birds in nature helped them to just block everything out and just practice mindfulness in a new way that perhaps they've not practiced before. Some of them did share how sometimes some mindfulness tools can be something that they don't look forward
Mm,
to, or it can be a little bit hard to utilize day to day, but they expressed that they really did look forward to getting out and birding or just stopping and listening to birds or looking at birds. Really helped them just get back into their
mm,
body. That was one of the things that I found. It did correlate with some of the other research studies that I did use in my literature review. There were a few studies in which they did find that there were benefits on mental health, and then there was some other findings. There was also participants shared how the birding community really helped them with social connectedness.
mm,
So there was that positive aspect with birding. Um, the way that I found birdability was actually through one of the most significant findings, which was lack of accessibility.
mm,
Participants shared how there's a lot of underrepresentation or lack of accessibility. Um, Nature trails are not as accessible for individuals who have disabilities, or maybe they don't know what a trail looks like. They can't get as far as they might be able to. So through finding Birdability, I was able to show how Birdability has actually done a really great job at filling that gap and really helping individuals learn what a trail looks like before they go. And so
mhm,
that's an amazing start to bridging that gap to accessibility for individuals. The trail, I believe it's like the trail map.
yeah, the birdability map.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
Yes.
amazing for people to finally have access to. Is there accessible ADA parking
Mhm,
spaces? Are there bathrooms? Is there places to sit down? And I think just working on that and making birding organizations and agencies aware of how beneficial that tool is
mm,
a fantastic start to be able to get
mhm,
people to access
mhm,
that. There was also a finding of conservational awareness, which is
mm,
something that I know Eric kind of touched on a little bit earlier, where it's like being aware of all these birds that are here. They want us to listen to them, right? They want us to see
mhm,
them. There's something that my participants shared that there's something that turns on, right? That just doesn't turn off again. You become so aware
Mhm.
of birds and their habitat, the environment that they're in, and just being more aware of conservation and what can we do to protect these species, or being very aware of the the impact that humans have on the environment. Those were some of the findings that I was able to
Yeah.
find through my research.
Thank you so much for sharing those. It really, it resonates so much when you talk about birding as a different avenue to mindfulness as a trauma survivor. When people would say, "Oh, mindfulness, you just sort of try to be very present in this moment and tap into like listen to what your brain is saying and then remind it to come back to the." And I was like, I don't, that does not work for me as a trauma survivor because I'm not actually wanting to be in my brain and like with those thoughts. And so birds were the way that I was able to be fully present in any given moment because I could focus, right, on this natural world around me. Pamela, welcome. We're so glad that you are here. We had the opportunity for Eric and Elizabeth to introduce themselves. I would love to have you also introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what initially drew you to birding. And I feel like you would be able to really jump into the next question, which is about how birding functions as a mindfulness practice for you, for the communities that you serve.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm just going to say good morning and sorry
Yay.
for not being here. I was trying to get here. I went through every contortion of trying to get on here. It was painful. So happy to be here. And again,
Yay.
my apologies for arriving at this time. I'm Tama Watts. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am very much a birder in the way that I show up to bird, which can look like all kinds of iterations of such, and embrace all of those and encourage others to do the same. My background is in mental health. I am a licensed psychotherapist and a mindful outdoor guide. I also serve on a number of 3 different boards in the bird world, conservation, environmental, with Audubon, California. I'm the SoCal representative for chapters in our region, on the board for Audubon, California. I'm also on the San Diego Bird Alliance board and on an advisory board for the Project Feeder Watch with Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So, and I know we're talking about this. Part of my engagement in those capacities is all interwoven with the birds. I am a disabled birder as well. I know that I present as one who folks may wonder, at the silent
Mm,
disabilities,
mhm.
which I feel like that's a whole nother conversation,
Yeah.
right? About
Yeah.
what that's like. I have a chronic condition, neurological condition called chronic regional pain syndrome. And recently I've actually been going through, I have a suppressed immune system that I'm going through treatments, which explains a lot, I think, of other things that I've been dealing with most of my life, majority of my life. So, and then I have other identities as well. So, but I won't keep going on and on with that, about that. I wrote the book. I did write, I'm an author. I wrote the book, Keep Looking Up, Your Guide to the Powerful Healing of Bird Watching with Hay House. And that book was directly and is about my journey of healing, connecting with birds when I was very much in despair, experiencing significant mental health conditions, depression, anxiety about what my future might look like. And the depression was born out of grief and loss from how I used to function physically and mentally and socially. Things that I used to be able to do, I no longer could. And it didn't look like that. I hadn't arrived at the point of being able to adjust to what my new way of being could be. And so I kind of spiraled into a further, well, for me, I call it darkness in that period where I was couch bound, inbound, friends and family who used to connect didn't as much. And maybe some of this resonates for some of you where you feel like life is going on without you. And that was that grief and the loss piece. And as a mental health practitioner, I always say this, like, these conditions don't discriminate. So it didn't pass me by. So I could have the cognitive understanding of my depression, and yet doesn't mean I wasn't going to still experience it and have the vestiges of what that felt like. And my severe pain condition further deepened that depression, and trying to cope with medications and trials and errors and all the visits and appointments and all of that we often encounter. And all that to say, sometimes I get very long-winded, is literally one day I looked out of a kitchen window while trying to hold a little pan of water, because even that was a task and challenging, and noticed a yellow flutter outside in a tree that I thought was the blossoms, but ultimately turned out to be a male yellow warbler, which is a very bright, very yellow bird with red streaking on its breast, if you're familiar with this bird. I didn't even know it was a male yellow warbler, okay? I just saw this yellow bird. It fascinated me. It intrigued me. And each time I would go to the kitchen, I would begin to look out of that window. And bit by bit, that allowed me to connect with the outside world in a way that became a refuge and a sanctuary, instead of it presenting itself as this place I couldn't go anymore or be anymore. And I began to notice a lift in my depression, my shame at not being able to do things the way I used to, all of that. So it deepened my connection and my curiosity. And so the outdoor space, at first I would begin with maybe a minute sitting outside, because that was all I could do. Sometimes I couldn't go outside at all, and I would look through a window as best, or listen. And so that was my connection through my disabilities to connecting with that yellow bird, and the rest is history. And I really say, like, that was the sunshine that shone on me that day and really led me to notice the other birds in the yard and how life can be. And I learned, a lot of acceptance of self through that journey, and curiosity eventually over years. This took years of the healing process to then be able to join a community in San Diego and start birding little by little. And here we are today. And that's where this other piece about us connecting and feeling connected in the ways we can. I feel like the birds have taken me on this journey, including, like, I feel like I'm broken, but I really mean it, including being here today with all of you. I'm sorry. I know that was a long answer.
No, are you kidding? Like, that's what this whole time is about, friends. It's about really deeply explaining how each of us got here, I think, and why and how that continues to show up in our lives, right? That connection to birds that we've developed as a coping mechanism, as a mental health and wellness tool. I'm so grateful because one of the things that, as I was putting this together, that I was doing some research and I found was a quote from the World Health Organization. And it was interesting to me because they said that a diverse set of individual, family, community, and structural factors may combine to protect or undermine mental health, and that those who experience poverty, violence, disability, or inequality like racism, sexism, homophobia, transmisogyny are more likely to develop mental health, sorts of conditions. And so as I was thinking about this connection, it made me super aware of the fact that by our very nature, those of us who live with marginalized and historically and currently excluded identities often are navigating that world without as many tools, without as many coping mechanisms available to us. But nature and birds are almost everywhere. It's one of the things that we're working, of course, to constantly reduce the barriers that folks have to be able to access those. And I want to shout out to Black Birders Week this week, to Black AF in STEM and others for doing the work within the Black community to build awareness, community, right? Like one of the things that you mentioned, Tama, that I'm really hoping all of you could talk about is some of the ways that birding has helped you feel more connected, not only to yourself, right, which I heard each of you mention to some degree, but also to the world and to communities. And I'm curious, Eric, would you be willing to sort of talk a little bit about how birding has helped bring you to this place of connection to the natural world and other people actually as well?
Sure. So I think a lot of us who are birders have, especially the folks like on here, like Kat and Tama, that birds came to us at a time when we really needed them, when we needed that the serenity and the hope and the magic that they just bring into our lives. And you know, I think when I started birding, it was a time. So I have muscular dystrophy, and I got into birds at a time when my body was progressing at a rate that I was having a difficult time accepting. I lost more or less my ability to play music, which was my biggest passion. I had to kind of basically go to really part-time at work. I had to back off of that, and I wasn't really sure of my place in the world at that time. And the birds just absolutely changed my life. I mean, they brought renewed joy into my life. They gave my life purpose. They filled my life with creativity. And I just think I'm a completely different person now. And my journey started much like Tam was like at looking out the back window and getting familiar with the birds in my own backyard. And then soon that led to putting up bird feeders and getting more familiar with identification, figuring out what the birds were. And then it opened up even more to not only birds, but to what are the names of these trees and what are the names of the flowers, and watching unholy lizards out on my window ledge. And it really brought me back to nature. It really deepened my connection to the actual land where I live. And often we can be so disconnected. I mean, we're so often in virtual spaces, not to not to demean this one where we're at, which is very positive and lovely. But and social media is just increasingly, taking up a lot of our time and our attention. But anyway, ultimately, birds then brought me not only to my outside my back patio, but they brought me to parks, right? And then they brought me to other birders, and I started going on field trips, and I met Virginia from Birdability, and I found myself as excited to spend time with these people and talk to them and to glean their wisdom of birding and nature more generally. And I really found a community of people. And since then, I've become even more engaged. I'm volunteering a lot for Birdability. I'm helping to lead walks, and I'm writing. I have a Substack where I write about my birding adventures and the joy that I experience. And really, as much as that is a place for me to share my own experiences, it's about getting people excited about birds. And oh man, do I get excited when one of my readers shows up at one of our bird walks. Nothing makes me happier. And when I lead a Birdability walk, I'm left feeling so rewarded. Like I had a hand in making this thing happen, bringing these people out to enjoy the beauty of nature and birds. And I am so much more plugged into my community after getting into birds than I was before. And it seems ironic, doesn't it, that we go to birds and we go to nature to kind of escape in a way from, the difficulties and the hardships and the complexities of human relationships, right? Um, but then that leads us to become even more involved with people and to love people even more. So that's a long kind of explanation, but yeah, no, birds just absolutely revolutionized my lives. I do not only feel connected to other people and to more connected to nature, but I feel more connected to who I am. I feel like I have a deeper understanding of who I am and who I'm trying to be.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. Elizabeth, I'm wondering if there are things that you would like to add from your own life, from your research, from any of the things we've talked about.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, what really got me into birding was just deciding to stop drinking, right? To
Mhm.
decide to become sober. And having that time open up that newfound energy. And it's difficult for anybody who's decided to abstain from drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. It's a difficult journey, but it was something that what helped me, what has helped me throughout these past 2 years is connecting with birding communities, finding these amazing people from different walks of life and having this moment in time when you're out with a group. I was very lucky to have gone on my first field trip with Feminist Bird Club. And it was just such an amazing experience that's out in LA. And it was just incredible to meet these people, right? Like these strangers that you've never met before and just immediately have this bond just click right away. And to if you've never even said a word to them, is to just share and like be very excited about the same thing. It was amazing to just have that special magical connection with these people who share your interest as well as with birds and the environment, being more aware, as I mentioned before, being more aware of what's around you. Why do these plants grow here? Are they native? Learning about different wildflowers and different animals outside of birds. It's just been an amazing experience. And that kind of led me to wanting to start part-time birders. I am out in a sort of rural high desert area of Los Angeles County. It's about 40 miles out from the city of LA. And just being here and getting to know different areas and different people who possibly never really been interested in birding and trying to engage that community. It's amazing how birding can take you to new places that you've never been before. Places that you see or you drive by often, and just getting to know how magical a place can be. Things that have been there maybe your entire life and you've never known until you know, right? Until you're able to listen or see birds around. I want to share a quote really quickly. It's something that one of my participants in my research study shared. And it's about how birding enables people to engage with others in unique circumstances. So my participant gave him a pseudonym, Brown Pelican. He said, quote, "Birding is the only time you would ever talk to strangers in the woods for an hour and walk with them. It's a weird thing that I don't think any other hobby really has. It's so weird. Even this morning, I was just out looking for a lapwing, and there were 4 or 5 people who had their scopes on it. And they're like, oh, come on over, take a look through the scope. It's the weirdest way to meet people, but you meet a lot of people doing it, and everyone is pretty friendly." So it's incredible. I can speak to that. Just meeting someone for the first time and having that connection with them. It's been amazing that there's so many friendships that can be born out of just one walk or one birding event that you have with someone. Even just to sit and listen and connect with the community has been incredible. I've made so many friends and connections with people through part-time birders, through Feminist Bird Club, getting to know all the amazing organizations and agencies that are out there has been incredible. it's a community that I didn't know that I needed. And I'm just so happy that I'm here getting to know all these incredible people. It's definitely something that I will continue to. I don't think I can ever stop birding. It's something that's just, it brings a joy. It's a magical sense of joy that you can incorporate in every single day throughout the day, even if I'm feeling stressed or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, just stepping outside, even just for a few seconds and just listening. You're bound to hear a bird or bound to just be able to utilize that mindfulness, even if it is just for a moment, to just reset your nervous system and ground yourself. It's been incredible.
Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. I love that quote. It's so true. Like birding is one of those places where we make, friends of strangers. It's not uncommon, I know, for probably many of us to, if we're out on trails, to just say, what are you seeing? If we see someone else, right? Or what are you hearing? If they're paused and listening deeply. And that to me is exactly what we were talking about. It's this way that birding, which is so very much about our own experience in nature, also becomes a connection to deep community. Tama, is there anything you'd like to add to how birds function, like as a community builder and as a sort of connection? Before we move to our next question, I would love to hear from you.
Sure. I would add too that birds allow us to create communities that are intergenerational, that birds don't have discernment, they'll accept us as we are. And fortunately, any age from infancy through on 100 years plus, right, with all our capacities and in different ways of being, is accepted, and we create community in that process. So there can be that intergenerational connection. There's times I've birded with, or I make an intentional effort to bird with my grandchildren, whether they're an infant or a young adult, to I would bird with my mother who had dementia, to, across all the spans in terms of that way. And I think that's incredible. And that's because of the birds are the commonality that we're experiencing and sharing. And then as I was listening, another way that I enjoy being in community, like, let's say we're out in an outing with people, is being in close proximity and being able to talk. It's not all hushed and whisper, right? And engaging in that community, but then also being able, there's times where I need to separate myself and get a little distance. And so I still feel connected to community, and the community accepts me going off by myself and standing over there for a bit. And maybe it's because I want to, whatever the reason, it's because I'm doing maybe a personal mindful experience, or I'm needing to get a little distance because I'm feeling overly stimulated being around everyone, and I need to get a little distance, like you spoke of, Elizabeth, about getting grounded, and then re-entering and being either peripherally still connected or back into the group and continuing on. And that's, I think that's really wonderful to have, for that to be the case. And communities, again, that allow us to rest, to stop and pause and sit as well, is also really reinforcing in terms of that community. Yep.
I want to lift up, Tama, something that you said too, and Eric, I know you have said in the past, which is about birding right from your own home, because there is this real joy of being able to bird with others, but there is equally, I think, a joy of having that accessible to us immediately inside our own homes. And I know I heard you, Tama, and you, Eric, both talk about that. One of the things that Birdability has tried to really do is define birding as any enjoyment of wild birds. And I'm wondering, Tama and Eric, if you all could speak to the ways that birding from the couch, birding from home, birding from the backyard is a practice that also sustains you as a birder with a disability?
Sure. So yeah, I love birding at home. And often folks with disabilities, like, a lot of us live on fixed incomes, a lot of us can't drive, a lot of us, have limited access to transportation. And a lot of times we just don't have the energy in a given day to even go out. And so I bird from every part of my home, really. I bird from bed in the morning. I listen to the bird songs and at dawn. Um, then not to get too graphic, but then I'll move on to my bowel routine and I will bird from the toilet as well. And I've gotten some pretty amazing I guess I'd call them toilet birds, right? Like I've got Nashville warbler, yellow warbler, blue-headed vireo. Like these are like some pretty awesome birds, and I've been able to enjoy them just by listening from the bathroom. And I do the same thing. I will roll out to the backyard, and the wonderful thing about birding from home, especially when you have a pretty significant physical disability, is that you can soak up the mental health benefits of birding without putting your body through additional pain or exhaustion or fatigue, which is something that I deal with a lot. And so I've just really come to cherish any time that I get to bird from the backyard.
I love that so much. I want to just, Tama, ask you to follow up on that because I love your story of looking out the window and seeing the yellow warbler or the yellow flit that you didn't even know was a warbler. And I've certainly gotten to experience some of your mindfulness Monday posts and other kinds of things where you are clearly paying deep attention to the birds in your yard.
Yes, it's similarly to Eric. I start each day from inside. I in the book and stuff, I talk about from inside looking out. And that can also, if you can't see with your eyes, I say look in terms of from an internal vantage point of connecting. And so I use the word seeing in that way as well as hearing. So how you connect with birds from inside looking out is that beginning and is that connection, however subtle or not so subtle, depending on the day and the time. It's this that our awareness of connecting. And there is some research, and forgive me, I always forget the names of research that addresses that when we're even by ourselves listening to birdsong, it reduces the sense of isolation. And I think that's significant, that just to have that awareness without, not everything we do is because, but just knowing that even though we're not trying, it's just enjoying the birds. We're reaping some of those benefits. And there's a reciprocity that can happen, which is part of being mindful and be able to slow down and be where you are. And whether you have a backyard or not, there is birds still around and available. So that's the piece that I just want to really underscore is that beginning. And for me, it is every day. I mean, I bird every single day. It's just like a standard because I'm at home, I'm listening to the birds. So then I've already started. And then we go from there. I mean, my dog is even now ready. She stands by the door when she sees the coffee because that means we're going out to bird. And I helped her to bird also and not go chase after the bird. She's a little dashing, so her tendency would normally, so she even kind of gets into a zone of requiting or receiving whatever shows up, look at them, don't chase them, and they get to know her, and the birds do get to know us. And so there is that relationship that also connects us, and that's part of that being in the present moment is that mindfulness. And that's where then our healing and sense of self and sense of purpose and enjoyment, like sometimes we don't even give ourselves permission to just enjoy the fact that we're enjoying the birds. And so I just want to underscore that piece too. Like we get to amplify that we're enjoying how we're doing it with the birds, whether it's inside in the bathroom or in the doorway or from the car.
I am so grateful that you named that for a number of reasons. Number one is that I think many folks have a sense of birding as one specific thing, one way, and it's like identifying and listing and, moving on to the next thing. And I think that the invitation that birds give to us, as you all have all talked about already, is to slow down, is to be present, is to really be in awe and wonder of the world around us, whether that is listening or whether that is watching or whether it's just being aware, right, of birds. And I'm really curious if you all could talk about a little bit more about to just build on that. What kinds of things in your experience does birding do to support emotional regulation, to help navigate a life with disability, with sobriety, with a real desire to be mindful? And I'm going to just tell you all, my screen, for some reason, has decided to quit. So I can't see any of you all, but I can hear you. So I don't know if you can see me or not, but my computer screen is just gone. So I can't take, oh, and then it just came back. Okay, beautiful. I mean, thank goodness. I'm wondering if you all could talk just a little bit about how you experience birding supporting mental regulation, supporting presence. And I'll start actually with you, I think, Elizabeth, if that would be okay, because my screen just went out again, so I can't see what y'all are thinking, but
Thank you, Kat. Yeah, like I've mentioned, it's really supported me on my journey through sobriety. I think having that hope, right? Because birds, I feel like, do inspire that sense of hope. It's not really knowing what I will find. Going to the same place, you're not always going to see the same birds or hear the same birds. And I think having that, even if it's sprinkled throughout the week or sprinkled throughout my day, even if in little increments, brings a lot of joy. It helps me stay grounded. It gives me a lot of hope to get through the week. And that's something that my participants also shared, is having that sense of wonder. That's what ultimately I found through my research is that kept birders birding. It kept them engaged in the hobby. It kept them just continuing to get out and birding. There's some hobbies that maybe sometimes people can pick up and then maybe just stop engaging with the hobby. And that's something that sets birding apart from others, is having that sense of wonder and that desire of knowledge, because there's so much that birds have to teach us. There's so much to learn, whether if it's not birds, it's nature, it's foliage and other species that are also around that keeps them going out there. I think that's really the biggest motivating factor in the engagement of this hobby. And the same goes for me. I feel like even if I've been to the same lake 7, 10 times in the last month, I know that if I go, I will probably find something that is just incredibly awe-inspiring to me. Even if it's always been there, I will have not noticed, right? There's always a sense of wonder that's available in nature. There's so much that nature can show us, that wants to show us, wants to be seen and heard. And I think that's ultimately what has really helped guide me on this journey of sobriety, what keeps me going out there, and just involving that birding aspect into different areas of my life, right? I could have done my research on something else.
Yeah.
I could have done it on absolutely anything else, but
Yes.
deciding to focus on this just brought so much joy to me. It made my research, doing my research so much easier, and just getting to know individuals. I had participants that were halfway across the country that I was interviewing, and it was just so incredible to hear just some of the similar overarching themes that I heard with other individuals in other states. And it's just incredible to be able to have that
Mhm.
connection with others. That's really what motivates me at the end of the day, is incorporating it into so many different aspects of my life. A creative outlet, starting a birding group, making stickers, making earrings, making shirts, and just it's really something that has touched so many aspects of my life and just brings so much hope and joy and childlike wonder to me.
I I want to follow up on that and just say, I read a book not that long ago that was about awe and about the research and the science of experiencing awe and how important that is actually for our mental health and wellness. So you naming that very thing, right? That that awe and novel experience of listening to birds, of seeing birds, and of paying attention to them, the world in a bigger way through our senses, the smell. Recently, I was in Colorado with a group of interns and with one of our other Birdability captains, Jerry Barrier. And one of the things that happened was that one of the interns on one of our bird outings pointed out and led everyone to a ponderosa pine so they could smell the bark of the ponderosa pine tree, which apparently smells like vanilla. And thinking about birding as a gateway to so many of our senses and using those in nature, just I wanted to lift up those connections that you're naming. Eric, I'm curious if you would share some of the ways that you have experienced birding supporting emotional regulation.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm birding, really, uh, when I focus on a bird, everything else just falls away, and I am completely present with the bird. I've tried for years to meditate, and I've always kind of struggled with it. But not with watching birds. With watching birds, like it's instant. The it just switches on the mindfulness and the total presence. And I I have to share a little of my own yellow warbler story because it really does speak to the awe that you were describing. And a few weeks ago there was a big storm system moving through Texas, and I rolled outside more instinctively I just wanted to feel the storm chilled air more than anything else. And I just sat there and I sat there, and at some point a yellow warbler, a bright male yellow warbler, the butter yellow with the chestnut brown streaks and just absolutely beautiful, landed in a sycamore tree that was maybe 6 feet away from me. And I was just absolutely, I mean, my jaw, I'm sure, was dropped. I was absolutely awestruck by this yellow warbler. And I watched as it diligently went to the end of every single branch of this tree to gather insects. And and when that happens, like I said, the whole world just falls away, and I'm 100% totally present. And with the way that times are right now, we're just constantly inundated with stress, politically, socially, environmentally, and having a disability, I honestly think is like having a full-time job by itself, or it's like raising a kid or something like that. It is so all encompassing and has constant stresses of its own. And so to be able to have that moment of just utter peace and presence, I think is so essential to our mental health.
1,000%. I want to, one of the experiences that I had really recently was traveling to Sequoia National Park and having a chance to meet the world's largest trees. And that that awe, that wonder of that experience is something that like has been holding up my mental health for weeks now and probably will continue, right, to hold up my mental health. Um, and it joined that novel experience, joined the day-to-day experience that I think we've all talked about of Kama, similar to you, I get my coffee, I sit at my table and I watch my birds and I listen to my birds. That's the first thing I do every morning. It is the thing that grounds me and makes me feel most connected and at home in my own body and self, as well as the world around me. And I always say, no matter what, you can count on chickadees, because I will always have black cap chickadees to watch, and they will always bring me joy. Um, and for those of us who use birding in that way, it really is like a mental health uh, intervention, I want to say almost. Tama, I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about, I know that you are a nature guide. I know your work as a psychotherapist like is all mashed up, right, with your personal experience of birds. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that. I saw recently for the first time an article talking about somebody writing a prescription for birding. And I thought, oh, is this where we're going? I like it. Okay. Could you just talk a little bit about what you've learned about all of this in your work and your life?
Sure. I guess what's coming forward for me to say is that, in if you've been in therapy or any in that realm, oftentimes counselors will suggest that you have a toolbox, a toolkit,
Mhm.
and that you try all these different tools and strategies for coping with what life presents itself with, right? In terms of stressors, the unpredicted, the predicted, and relationship, however that shows up. And so I like to suggest and invite folks to consider birds in that way as
Mhm.
a tool. You can engage with birds in a lot of different ways, but one way is also as a coping tool. Like they are the medium, they are the passageway, the little ushers, the feathered ushers, um, to feeling grounded again. And so there's a piece to it where you don't have to work at it. I think
Mhm.
so much like we've talked about, people feel you have to work at meditating, you have to work at all these things, and that's like another layer of barrier in and
Mhm.
above the other challenges that we may be experiencing. And so I just want to give that invitation that with the birds, they are the vehicle by which you connect and can allow that process to be however it is and not have it feel very prescribed. I mean, I
Mhm.
like the idea of there is in the medical field that started in Europe of prescribing prescriptions for health, for spending time outdoors. And so
Mhm.
along the same lines about connecting with birds, like giving yourself permission. And
Yeah.
sometimes we need that external source to say, here, I'm granting you permission to be in awe, be curious. You don't have to know what they are, but notice the birds, right?
Mhm.
Or go outside or for
Mhm.
10 minutes twice a week or every day, whatever it is. And sometimes we need that. And then so the next level is to give ourselves permission to do that. And it might be for a minute, it might be 5 minutes. And part of that process is mental well-being, is that
Mhm.
self-care kit that we're tapping into. And then there's
Mhm.
other times where you have the intentionality of saying, I'm taking the next hour to go roll out and see what I see, hear what I hear, because I need this, because I'm feeling too stressed, too angry, too sad, and I need to do this and
Mhm.
see how you feel. And so, and then another piece to this, sometimes folks are who might question the benefits of being specific about connecting and spending time with birds, I like to offer the idea of check in with yourself about how you're feeling before you do it, and then check in with yourself again after you spent 1 minute, 10 minutes, or an hour or more. Just do that. Just do that quick little assessment, and that should really inform you about what I would be surprised if there weren't benefits of some sort, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you're going to I'd be able to identify some benefits that help, that help, which is why we're having this conversation, why so many people are into it. So that's part of the mental health piece that I think we can all do. And it doesn't, again, it can be customized to what you can do, how you want to dress or not dress. You know, we talked about the coffee and the birds, like must have coffee, must have birds, and probably pajamas. Okay. Like that's how I start. Okay. So
so much yes to that. And I love that because one of the questions I had was about simple ways somebody new to birding or new to birding as like a mental health tool could like enter right into that practice, into that space, into that idea. And I think you've just shared like such a really good reminder, which is however you enter is right. And that it can be in your backyard, it can be out in the world, it can be intentionally, you know, setting a timer or engaging whatever senses, right, that you have available to you. I mentioned that for myself, I am a trauma survivor, and I did for 30 years, I did anti-sexual violence work working with other trauma survivors. And really a deep part of that was about teaching grounding tools and helping build people's toolboxes, right? And Tama, that's one of the things I love about your social media account. You're constantly sharing, here's another thing to put in your toolbox. And it usually involves birds, which is one of my favorite things. And, you know, when we're thinking about building that toolbox and building up that capacity to um, re-regulate ourselves and reground ourselves, one of the great joys is that that really can happen in any way, in a balcony, in a hospital room, in a, you know, on a in your backyard, on a trip in a car. There are ways that that birds and nature can be available to us. I'm curious, because we have you both here, Elizabeth and Tama, I'm curious if there's anything that you all would like to sort of talk about in terms of what you wish more mental health professionals maybe knew about or know about the role of nature-based practices like birding. I know you touched on that a little bit, but I would love to open, especially Elizabeth, I know also you focus on this a little bit in your research. I also want to acknowledge we go until quarter after the hour because somebody was like, aren't we done? And I'm like, nope, we're actually, this is an hour and 15-minute conversation today, but we will understand if you need to leave. We'll be sad to lose your presence, but we will understand. But Elizabeth and Tam, I'm wondering if you could just talk really briefly about what you wish mental health professionals knew about nature-based intervention.
I can speak to that a little bit. I know Tama mentioned utilizing that, right, as a toolbox, adding it to people's toolbox to be able to use for mindfulness. I think it's important to make it clear that anything can be considered birding in any kind of form, whether it's in the bathroom or it's in your backyard, in your kitchen, outdoors, anywhere. I think it's important to um, challenge that idea because there is a huge misconception. There's a huge stigma. I feel like my participants shared how difficult it is, right, for like new birders to be able to feel like they belong in these spaces. There's a lot of this idea of what a birder should look like. A lot of individuals try to enter spaces and find that they're not as representative or inclusive as they'd like them to be. The average birder is a white, wealthy male. And I think helping individuals understand that it doesn't have to be that way, or redefining what a birder means. It's allowing it to be what it needs to be for people to be able to feel like they can enter the community. They can call themselves a birder if they'd like to. I think that's the most important part of battling this stigma, battling this underrepresentation, getting more individuals to be able to participate in birding in whatever form that looks like for them. And I think that's the pathway to getting individuals to utilize this as a mindfulness tool. The ability to accept that they can consider themselves a birder if they'd like to, and not having this barrier. For example, the US Fish and Wildlife Service, I found through my research that they officially define a birder as someone who has to travel, I believe it's more than 20 miles from their home. In their catalog, they write that if you're birding in your backyard, or if you're doing something and then you see a bird, they don't consider that individual as a birder. So I think it's battling that, right? Dismantling that definition that they have and just redefining it so that people can feel involved, they can feel like they belong. I think that's the most important thing that Birdability is working on. There's so many amazing groups like San Diego Bird Alliance and all these groups that are redefining what birding is. I think that's one of the barriers that we are currently working on dismantling, and I feel like it's the pathway to getting more individuals involved in birding and utilizing it daily.
100%. I love it. Chris in the comments just said, do you take joy in birds? You're a birder. Like, if we could just be that clear, like that's our definition. If you take joy in birds, welcome, you're a birder, you belong here. And this seems like a really good moment to also just say that for Birdability Week this year, Birdability Week 2025, that is our slogan. Birdability Week 2025, you belong here. Like, you belong here. And I am so grateful at the ways that this panel has been uplifting how birding supports community building, particularly for marginalized, historically and currently really excluded groups. And also, Tamara, you said something earlier, and I'm like, about invisible disabilities, and that is a whole other conversation. And I think it's one we're not going to have time to get to today, even though I had a question about it. But I want to, and I think we will make time for the ways in which barriers, both for visible and invisible disabilities exist in the natural world and in the birding community, and that it's really important for us to be doing that work that Elizabeth, you were uplifting around, like, really the first and most important step is to redefine birding. And then after that, to begin breaking down in our community and in our natural spaces, barriers that folks feel. I'm recognizing we have such a limited amount of time left. I hate that because I'm loving this conversation so deeply with each of you. I'm wondering if maybe we could wrap with each of you sharing what gives you hope about the future of accessible, inclusive nature connection and birds and birding. And I'm just going to start with Eric because you're just to my right, and then I'm going to go around and ask each of you to share what gives you hope about the future of accessible and inclusive birding.
So I think what gives me a lot of hope is seeing how how I've gotten other folks interested in birds, who I don't think that was necessarily something on their radar. And now they're coming to, our inclusive and accessible walks here in Austin. There's a person that I know who also has physical and other disabilities, and she just installed her first bird feeder outside on her balcony. And when I saw that, oh my gosh, I was so excited. And she was sharing, photos of cardinals and she's like, and there's this brown bird that's going around that has a bright yellow white eyebrow, and was like, I think you might have a Carolina wren. Then sure enough, she shared a Carolina wren photo. But to see how how we've been able to get other folks interested in birding, and then to see the joy that it's bringing into their lives, this really is a movement and it's coming to fruition. So I'm very excited about the future of accessible birding.
Mhm. Elizabeth, do you want to share?
I think it's been incredible to see so many young people who've been coming out to our birding events with part-time birders. We've actually just had one on Sunday, and we had a handful of new birders said that they've never been before. So it's amazing to see, and just a diverse population, right? We have people from Latinx background, people from so many different backgrounds coming out. And just like Erica said, individuals too will like mention to me, like coworkers or just neighbors, I got a bird feeder. I think it's amazing. It's an amazing way to see people more involved in the community and just more aware, right? It's like that switch that turns on and it never turns off. And to have that conservational awareness and environmental awareness and just involvement of so many different people in this community to help to rebrand what a birder looks like or who a birder is gives me so much hope for the future. Birdability and San Diego Bird Alliance, Feminist Bird Club, all these Black Birders Week, all this inclusivity that we're seeing, all this representation, I think has been incredible, and I can only see it getting better for underrepresented populations, and increased accessibility gives me so much hope.
Tama, what are you feeling hopeful about?
I am even with all the atrocities and pain and uncertainty that is present, I'm hopeful because of spaces like this. Like, I mean, I can remember when Birdability just got started, and like we talked about it, because we're in Black Birders Week. They kind of, when that idea of Birdability Week came from Black Birders Week, that was born out of the Black Birders Week started because of the George Floyd murder and Christian Cooper incident in New York in Central Park happened. Those two incidents happened on the same day. So born out of that came Black Birders Week and awareness of being safe in spaces and connecting with community and being able to access spaces. It all intersects. And I think we've come to a point now where there's enough and sufficient awareness that we're having a collective voice to be able to move the needle even more forward, and to take up space and to feel confident in our numbers to really say, this is what we need, this is what we demand, this is what we expect, so that things truly are equitable. And so each one of us does, in fact, make a difference. And that can feel very cliche, but it really does matter in your workspace, in your school spaces, with your family, your friends. When we intersect and start talking about birdability or feminist bird club or all the different ways that there's community for our different identities, they intersect and support the collective for all of us to be in outdoor spaces, yes, including with the birds, but it's all of that. And that's what gives us the inspiration to go on, right? Because we've talked about how being outdoors, we start to feel better, we feel connected, right? We've heard the research today that re-emphasizes that. And it's free. We can find it on the corner next to the store, whether that's a little bit of a weed that's growing up, you might notice that, or you're in the, like with the giants, right? In Sequoia, if you do choose to travel or can travel versus can't, there's still access to that. And so us talking about that and making, it's like, no, this is one place where we all get to have this. So let's continue with that. That's what gives me hope. That's what makes some of the rough and difficult conversations and circumstances understandable. And maybe I don't always accept it, but to work through that so that we're like here having these kinds of conversations and more people are feeling safe and comfortable to be happy, to enjoy it, to be birdie nerds. You know, I'm part of a group too that in Southern California called the SoCal Bird Nerds. That's in a way connected to the San Diego Bird Alliance, but it's its own BIPOC group that birds in a very different way, because you feel safe, and we're expanding that joy. So that's what I feel hopeful about. And I hope you all will, you know, enjoy your enjoyment and allow yourself to be as free with it as you want. Like, and another thing, when we like end up with at the bird festivals, like Birdability showing up, all these different identities are showing up, and it really helps.
Mhm. It does. It one of the things I love, one of the things that is making me hopeful, first of all, is all of you and your willingness to be here and talk about how we support each other, we support our communities, and we support really the intersectional forward movement of disability justice, of racial justice, of anti-violence, of, you know, when we're thinking about all of these pieces as interwoven with each other and with mental health. That to me is what Mental Health Awareness Month is all about, is a reminder you're a part of something bigger. We're so glad you're here. You belong here. May the birds find you. May you be open to the birds finding you. And I just want to thank each of you, Elizabeth, Tama, Eric, for being here today, for sharing your story, your wisdom, yourselves. I always come out of these spaces feeling energized and ready to go for the next piece of work that's in front of us. And there's always another piece of work in front of us, and we can do it together. That's one of the things that these spaces remind us. We can do it together. I also want to give big thanks to our pro bono ASL interpreters, Tyree and Benny. Thank you for being here. We're super appreciative. And I want to thank those of you who joined us today, who made the time today to be here to talk about and think about birds and mental health. I also want to just say in the chat, I'm going to leave it open for a couple of minutes because currently, Tama, your information, somebody put in there where we can follow you. Elizabeth, I know where we can follow you. Eric, if you are able to drop in Bird City News. I want to make sure that the folks who are here today can access you all in lots of different platforms and your ongoing wisdom, because I know my daily is made better by being in community with you all in virtual and real life. And so I'm super grateful when we can offer that to others. And I will also follow up with an email out to everyone with ways to be in touch with Elizabeth, Tama, and Eric, and with the ways that you can get Tama's book and find Elizabeth's research and hear from Eric about birding while disabled and reflections, like really beautiful reflections on the world at large. I could not end this without thanking deeply again from the bottom of my heart the Reeve Foundation, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, that has really invested in these conversations specifically about birding and access to nature for people who live with disabilities, especially those who live with paralysis. Their work is absolutely crucial, and I'm really grateful to be able to do this kind of work in concert with them. So gratitude to each of you. I hope you all have a really birdie rest of your Wednesday, and I look forward to the next time we're in space together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kat, for being, as always, a phenomenal moderator and for creating the spaces. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. It's the joy of my job. So I can't wait to do it again soon and be back in space together. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.